Hello everyone, this is Mr. O'Brien, and welcome to the video quiz for Key Concept 1.2, which is still focusing on Period 1, 1491 to 1607. And this one in particular focuses on the Columbian Exchange. So let's get started. Alright, so Key Concept 1.2 states, European overseas expansion resulted in the Columbian Exchange, a series of interactions and adaptations among societies across the Atlantic. And those three societies would be the Americas, Europe, and Africa. Yes, there is more than one America. So the Columbian Exchange revolutionized life in the Americas, Europe, and Africa, in good and bad ways. Now, these key concepts provided by the College Board often have sub-concepts, and within Key Concept 1.2, sub-concept 1 states, the arrival of the Europeans in the Western Hemisphere in the 15th and 16th centuries, and that would be the 1400s and 1500s, triggered extensive demographic and social changes on both sides of the Atlantic. So, big ideas or essential questions. What were positives and negatives of the Columbian Exchange on both hemispheres, East and West, and what were reasons that led to European exploration? That's what we will focus on in this video quiz. Alright, so the Columbian Exchange, what was it? It was the exchange of all these things, plants, animals, cultures, humans, and diseases between the Americas, Europe, and Africa. One thing the AP test likes to make sure you know, it was more than food. The exchange was about more than just food, corn and potatoes. There was a lot of other stuff that we exchanged, good and bad. Examples of goods that we exchanged. From Americas to Europe and Africa, we had potatoes and we had maize, as mentioned in Key Concept 1.1, and tomatoes. And here we have a wonderful picture of a potato, and they are delicious. As are tomatoes, by the way. So, going from Europe to the Americas, we have wheat, we have rice, we have horses, we have chickens, and we have oxen. Oxen to pull the plows, and don't forget, as mentioned in Key Concept 1.1, horses revolutionized native life in the New World. Alright, as you can see from this picture. They look revolutionary. Alright, the impact of the exchange, or the effect of the Columbian Exchange. In Europe and in Asia, there was massive population growth due to this new food, this new source of food coming from the New World. In Africa, it was a more negative effect, and that's an understatement. Spanish and Portuguese were the first slave traders. They used Africans from West Africa as slaves in the Americas. The Dutch and the English eventually take this trade over, but they were latecomers to the game. And in the Americas, some changes. We have spread of diseases. The natives were remarkably clean people. When the Europeans got here, they weren't all that clean. So sociologists think that the natives were so prone to disease because their immune system was lesser, because in part because of their cleanliness. So much of the disease they caught was not unintentional, especially at first. In fact, when the Pilgrims got here and the later Puritans that came after them in the second wave, they got to kind of an empty, unpopulated place and thought that, hey, God must have cleared this for us. Look, this land is ready for crops to be grown. I can't believe this. God is on our side. It was disease brought by Spanish fishermen off the coast of New England. All right. We also have social classes, especially among the Spanish at first. You see an example you'd see would be the mestizos, as you see the picture up here. A mestizo or a mestiza would be a child born of a native and a European parent. Among the Spanish settlements in the New World, they developed these intricate systems of social hierarchy based upon your genetics. Whereas in the English settlement areas, it was more like a one-drop rule. If you had one drop of native or one drop of African in you, you were non-white. There was no, shades of gray. Don't forget, the horses transformed native life, made hunting easier, made war more destructive among them. And the encomienda system we will get to in a later video. but don't forget it's there. It was a change that was brought upon in part by the Columbian Exchange. Okay? So, a second sub-concept in Key Concept 1.2. European expansion into the Western Hemisphere caused intense social, religious, political, and economic competition in Europe among European nations. And the result was the promotion of empire building. So you had Spain competing with France, with England, with the Dutch, and they never stopped, actually. All right. So what drove this exploration and conquest among European nations? The 3 Gs: gold, glory, and the gospel. They wanted money, they wanted glory, that's kind of self-explanatory, and the gospel, to spread Christianity, whether it was Catholicism or Protestantism. For example, when the Spanish came over to the New World, the English said, we can't let those Catholics ruin the natives. We've got to go over there and give them Protestantism, and vice versa. All right, so I already talked about that. Money and food from the Americas led to population growth in Europe and helped shift the economy to what today we call capitalism. It wasn't called that back then. Remember, Adam Smith, who writes kind of the Bible of capitalism, didn't publish his book until, what year was it? 1776. That may sound familiar. So the word didn't exist yet. All right, and this shift from what you will learn to be mercantilism to capitalism, we will focus on later in the unit. But remember, the Columbian Exchange helped enable that transition. You also have joint stock companies. Today we'd kind of call them corporations, where wealthy investors back in Europe would invest in a settlement in the New World and expect to make money off of that. A prominent example would be Jamestown, 1607. The settlers that went to Virginia were there to make money, and their trip and was funded by these investors who expected to make money back in England. We have new technology that aids exploration. We have the sextant, kind of an early GPS system that could be used by sailors to find their exact position on Earth. So it led to more precise sailing. Alright, now that we're done with the content, let's get to some test tips. As far as the multiple choice questions and the short answer questions on an AP test, I would be familiar with the effects of the Columbian Exchange. Make sure you know it was not just food. For example, there was an increase in world trade. It permanently connected 2 hemispheres. Maybe be able to identify specific examples of goods and their effects, such as the horse and the potato or the tomato. All right. Make sure you know the impact on Africa, which was and is still very negative. A drastic growth in slavery came out of this. As far as the essay goes, again, this is from period 1, so it's not likely to be an essay question. And if there is an essay question on the test, period 1 will not be the only period on the essay question. In other words, the question itself will encompass multiple periods. And period 1 may be part of that, but you will not get an essay question based solely on period 1. All right, so that's it. Be sure to take the quiz that's going to be popping up right now.